Chapter 36, Friday, 11:31. Reflections. I took the steps up the snake stairs 2 at a time, and then bumbled about in the pitch darkness, as I tried to find the room where I last saw Gabriella. When I finally found it, I stood in front of the mirror, pointing the flashlight at the floor so it wouldn't blind me. The light reflected off the floor and upward into the mirror. It was as though the man in the mirror was being sucked into the light below from the darkness above. His legs emerged from white light, his eyes nothing more than dark sockets, his lips compressed in a thin line, as though in pain. It was as if he was being pulled apart from elemental forces. Was that man even me? Then the mirror became a window, showing a woman with her back to me, staring into impenetrable darkness. Once again, she was dressed in an elegant white gown, her jet-black hair flowing down her back in long curls. Did I want to see her again in all of her bloody rage? I trembled at the memory of her standing over me, her white dress soaked in blood. That was before Tom Horn shot her lover. Or would she turn and gaze on me with a broken heart? No. I was paralyzed the way one is before opening a letter confirming the ticket submitted with the winning lotto number is legitimate. It was too good to be true. When I tried to speak, the words caught in my throat. I swallowed, wiped my lips with my tongue, and tasted the salt from the sweat running down my face. I know who you are. Turn around. For God's sake, please turn around, I begged quietly. As she turned, the gown became a loose sweatshirt and gym shorts. The elegant high heels became basketball shoes, and the long, flowing jet-black hair transformed into short, thick, blonde hair, cut midway down a long, elegant neck. Cynthia smiled at me and said, "It's about fucking time." I didn't know I was falling until my rear hit the floor so hard that I thought I heard a board break. I shifted carefully, and nothing in my hip gyrated. Cynthia watched me with a nervous smile. You can talk," I blurted. She rolled her eyes and laughed. I realized how much I missed that laugh, which started low in her hard belly, traveled slowly between her firm breasts, and burst from her like waves breaking on a seashore. She always claimed I tried to make her laugh just to ogle her. "Yes, and you have no idea how hard it's been keeping my mouth shut all this time." I stared at her, drinking her in, knowing I was crazy and not caring one damn bit. She lowered herself effortlessly, cross-legged so we could be at eye level. When I painfully assumed the same position, she grinned at me. "You tried with a bruised butt," I said. She shook her head. "First of all, my butt doesn't bruise anymore, and you know damn well I could always sit like this. I am, or was, a gym teacher, remember? You have any idea how much time gym teachers spend sitting on the floor? Maybe we can get back to the question. Why haven't you said anything until now? No, better yet, why show up as Gabriella? Remember the last time? Because I will never fucking forget it." The edges of Cynthia's full lips turned down, while green eyes twinkled. "You have no idea how hard that was. It appears I'm sort of a prodigy. Oh, and I know it wasn't easy for you. You were trying to get a professional killer to come here. I was trying to scare you out of it. Well, it worked, as far as the scaring part anyway." She smiled at me gently. "Then you went and became the hero. Well, right up to the part of stepping on the dead snake. Aren't you going to ask why I'm here?" I shook my head. I'm afraid to ask." Cynthia frowned and said, "Why?" What if you're only here to send me a message?" I replied, hearing my voice falter. "No, Paul, I have quite a bit to say, but no message. I'm here because that's what happens when you love someone. Or that's what I think anyway. I showed up as Gabriella because you were in such pain for so long and talked about her. As bad as that hurt me, I was just trying to help you." I looked away, ashamed and embarrassed at the pain in her eyes. "Paul, it's okay," she said softly. I forced myself to look at her. "No, Cynthia, it isn't. I don't even know what to say. I've missed you more than I thought possible. I love you. You have to know that." She smiled and said, "Paul, I don't think I'd be here if you didn't. You're so confused that I couldn't see showing up as Gabriella." Still embarrassed, I tried to smile. "Yeah, I think I remember you trying a French accent." She grinned. "You two never talked as far as I knew. What would you talk about? Shows, fashion, the best influencers, and who wore what at the latest fundraiser? I had no idea what to say to you, even if I could fake that whiny accent. What about Gabriella? I asked. She drifted to her feet and pointed a finger at me. You think I knew she was alive? Do you think this level of existence has databases, maybe Twitter or Facebook? You were playing like you were Bronson in Death Wish. I got to my feet, muffled a groan, and said, You and your old movies. It was more like Brandon Lee in The Crow. Cynthia tried leaning out of the mirror. Sure, and how did that work out for him? She said. Yeah, he ended up in the afterlife with the love of his life. I can live with that. Trust me, I said with a smile. Her eyes narrowed, and she gave me her, don't mess with me, kid, look. Sure, you know I was talking about Brandon Lee, not Eric Draven, she said. I played the sympathy card and painfully lowered myself back down, holding my leg with both hands. Cynthia rolled her eyes and continued. That bastard Weeble sent you over the edge. You acted like a crazy man. No, you were a crazy man. Of course I was scared. There it was. Cynthia realized what she'd said and turned her head away. I shut my eyes and counted to 10. When I opened them, she was still looking away from me, but she was still there. Tears of relief trickled down my face. We sat in silence for a long time as I stared at her beautiful profile, and she looked off in the distance at something in her plane of existence. Am I crazy, Cynthia? Are you in my head? Am I talking to myself in a mirror? She looked down at me. Her eyes filled with tears. Pain etched on her face. Slowly, with the grace of the ballerina Cynthia had wanted to be, she lowered herself to sit cross-legged on the floor. She blinked away tears and forced a weak smile. God, I hope not. I was always the smart one in the room, she added. What am I thinking? I asked. Her clothes vanished, and I knew the truth. I knew it, I said bitterly. Her eyes widened. Slapping a hand to her mouth, she toppled over on the floor and held her stomach. What had I done? The fingers of my hand slammed into glass as I reached for her. I knelt in front of the mirror, unable to help the woman I loved as she writhed in pain. Slowly, the convulsions stopped, and she looked at me, kneeling in front of her. She removed a hand from her mouth and reached for mine. I looked from our fingers to her lovely face, pinched with the pain. Heat rushed to my face as I realized she was trying to squelch her laughter. I jerked my hand away and fell backward on the floor, glaring at her. I worked hard at holding that glare as she got herself under control to sit facing me again. She spoke as though out of breath when she could look at me. I'm sorry. Next time ask a harder question, Cynthia said, giggling. When I opened my mouth, she raised her palm. I closed it. She started giggling again, and I thought she was going to fall over, but she managed to control herself. She pointed at my crotch. That's not what I was thinking, I blurted out. Trust me, that's pretty much all you were thinking. Okay, what were you thinking? She asked, her words coming out between giggles. 5. I was thinking of the number 5. That was the best you could do? 5? 5? Oh, fuck me. Sorry, there I am in your head again, Cynthia said, catching herself from falling over and holding herself up with one hand, while pressing the other against her side. When she started gasping for air again, I asked, So, you still need air? She caught her breath and said, No, just habit. Let's be honest. Do I sound like I'm in your head? I thought about it and said, No. It sounded like she was right in front of me. She nodded and asked, Seriously, do you think you're even capable of talking like I do? Not the voice, the rest of it. Be honest. After a little thought, I said, Maybe I'm getting in touch with my inner woman. She leaned forward and said, One more crack like that and the clothes come back on. Does that sound like something you'd say to yourself? I admitted it had never crossed my mind and never would. She leaned back, uncrossed her legs, and pulled her knees up to cover her breasts. I said no, I protested. Just making a point. It's no crazier to believe in other planes of existence than it is to believe in a master of the universe. People have believed in spirits a hell of a lot longer than religion. Most are still arguing about it. I have no idea how to send them to the next plane, or God help me, I sure as hell would. There are others you talk to? I asked, feeling oddly jealous. Cynthia pulled her legs tighter together and her knees higher. No, Paul, I just sit around forever waiting for you. Of course there are others. Try to keep up. When I said crazy, I was talking about obsessing about Nikki. Not talking to me or Tom Horn, she said. I felt myself tighten. If Cynthia wasn't in my head, how did she know about Tom Horn? Cynthia rolled her eyes. Tom Horn, the guy you talk to who never answers? The guy who sounds pretty much like you when he texts. That guy? Oh, well, lots of people talk to themselves, I pointed out. Yes, they do, and that's not crazy, she said. Unless you answer, I said, completing her sentence. She shook her head. No, that isn't crazy either. My dad used to say, shoot all the lawyers in the heart and the shrinks in the head. He couldn't stand psychiatrists telling everyone what is normal. I agree. We all have enough brain cells for a dozen selves. Look, if we give our other selves a voice, we're abnormal. Seriously. This from the guys who said being gay was deviant behavior until 25 years ago and are now telling people they have a problem if they grieve for over a year? They're the guys driving people crazy with their crap. Why can't all of the people in our head have voices? Fucking A right, Tom's voice blasted. Would you tone it down? I said. Oh, excuse me for having an opinion. I forgot how much you like to mansplain, Cynthia snapped. Ah, not you. I don't even know what that means. Look it up. I will. I keep forgetting. So why can't he talk to me? She asked sweetly and loosened her grip on the knees. Carrot and stick were essential in coaching. He doesn't know what you're thinking? You have to talk out loud to him? Yes. Why is that? She asked. I don't know, Tom and I replied in unison. Why can't Tom talk? She asked. Yeah, tell her why I can't talk, Tom demanded. It's complicated. Twins don't have identical scars. I promised he could talk when we get our face fixed, I said. Cynthia's eyes widened in surprise, and she said, Oh, well, that makes sense, I guess. Until then, I guess you can text me? I'll think about it, I said. You'll think about it? Came out as a duet inside and outside my head. Fine, text your hearts away, I said. Good. When did you start listening to Tom? She asked hesitantly. Sometime after I started to hunt Nikki and before Kaufman, I said, looking down at the floor. How does Tom feel about taking over when, she asked, almost in a whisper. I hate it, Tom quietly replied. He's okay with it, I said. I'll bet. Then you do what? Cynthia asked. Watch, mostly. Sometimes give advice. It's hard to explain. I kind of go to another place, I said. Oh, I get that. Trust me, Cynthia said with finality. Ask her about Richard, Tom said. I don't want to, I replied. Cynthia cocked her head for a long moment before asking. What don't you want to do, Paul? I forced out the words. Ask about how you died. Did you have COVID? Was that it? She frowned. Yes, I had COVID, and yes, you wanted to come over, and no, you didn't because it was too weird for us. I always ask myself what might have happened if we had just said screw it and given Richard and Gabriella everything instead of continuing to play the game. I think we would have if we just had a little more time. She waited until I raised my eyes to hers. Yes, the last thing I remember was Richard standing over the bed crying, holding a pillow, and then I couldn't breathe. The next memories are watching you in a hospital bed, waking up over and over and over again to talk about Gabriella. I knew you were confused and not yourself with what that awful man had done to your head. I nodded and said, I'm sorry. There's so much I can't remember, maybe more than I thought. I don't know what I ever saw in her. You saw what every man who looked at her sees. Paul, Tom, do you guys know how much trouble you're in? Nothing I can't handle, I replied. Nothing we can't handle, Tom added. She shook her head and said, Really? Nothing you can't handle? Your Marshall friends no longer guard you. I would love to figure out how to meet them someday. They seem like good friends to you. Oh, and Paul, please don't put bugs in their phones. I was in a little bit of a tough spot, I said, feeling the heat rise in my face. No, what I mean is there is no need. I can listen to them for you. Back to we can take care of ourselves. Let's see. We have a fascist HOA, a kinked federal prosecutor, and a guy named Frank Dragna. who will figure out who ripped him off sooner or later. Did I forget anyone? Weeble, Tom said. I ignored him and said, no, that's about it. There was a St. Louis detective, but he's out of luck now. Tell her Weeble, Tom said a little louder. Look, forget Weeble, I snapped. Cynthia looked up and said, oh, how could I forget that turd? Thanks, Tom. No problem, he replied. When I didn't answer, Cynthia raised her eyebrows, and I smiled. I liked being the chosen one, and sure as hell wasn't going to share my girl with some jackass. Something else you forgot. I have immunity, and I've been off the booze for a week, I pointed out. She smiled. Right, you were in a hospital, but congrats on not buying beer, and be careful with the oxy. I rolled my eyes and nodded when she didn't smile with her eyes or mouth. I cleared my throat and grunted. I'm not a fucking idiot, Cynthia. Her eyes sparkled, and her smile felt like a cool breeze in that hot, dusty, airless room. The smile stayed in place, but her eyes softened as tears rolled down my cheeks. Paul, I'm still here. There's nothing we can do about the past or what happened. Sure, we should have let Richard and Gabriella play their games and gone our own way. Paul, I believe with all my heart that we were both waiting for something to happen because we thought we had time. Then time stopped, for us anyway, until now. This isn't what we ever dreamed would happen, but it's what we have now. I wiped my tears away with the back of my hand and forced a smile. I know, but it's hard. It always seemed like time stopped when it was only the two of us talking, as if we were the only people in the world, even when surrounded by a party. But goddamn it, Richard and Gabriella had pillow talk. Cynthia started shaking, and I felt terrible about ruining our moment until I realized she was trying to hold in a laugh. With an effort, she composed herself, began to speak, and stopped to swallow a laugh. Raising an apologetic hand, she said, Paul, be honest, honey, did you and Gabriella ever have pillow talk? Cynthia, be honest, during our long talks, how often did you think talking was overrated? That doesn't mean I would trade this moment, being with you again, for anything. I stared into her eyes, not knowing what else to say, and worried that if we stopped talking, I might find myself sitting on the floor in front of an old mirror that reflected a man alone in an empty, dusty room. I shuddered with relief when Cynthia finally spoke again, her voice light and chiding, as it had often been during our talks. She often took me to task for working too much, drinking too much, and exercising too little. Maybe that was how she kept our talks from progressing to pillow talk. Speaking of the now, can I ask what you intend to do about the 2 bodies in that coal bin beneath your bedroom? Really, guys? Was that the best you could do with Richard? Seriously, the guy offs me, and you have to keep him in the fucking basement? She's right, Paul. I told you we should haul him up to the mountains and dump him, Tom barked. The hell you did, I snarled back, and watched in alarm as Cynthia recoiled. I had seen the look on my face in the mirror. How in the fuck do you glare at the voice in your head? You don't, which was why I tried like hell to ignore him when we weren't alone. Tom claims putting Richard in the coal bin with Driscoll was my idea. Says he wanted to haul him to the mountains. Bullshit. No, remember, you never said a word about what we would do with him until I got him all the way up the stairs. You said there were too many cameras to bury him on the golf course. We didn't have enough time before daylight. I said to use the truck to haul his ass to the mountains on our way out of town. You said, oh, fuck it. You don't think Gibaldi has trackers on that truck? They looked hard for Driscoll and never found him when they owned the house. Now the house is mine and they would need search warrants. What are they going to say? Hey, Judge, we left a guy in the place to kill a witness, and not only did he not do the job, now we can't find the bum. Hey, wait a second. I could see myself glaring into the mirror. Cynthia, did you say Richard killed you? I guess I thought he might have, but, I said, hearing my voice trail away, and the reality finally sank in. The bastard had gotten off easy. The problem was not that he was in the coal bin beside Driscoll. The problem was that he was lying next to Driscoll, dead. Cynthia answered the question I couldn't bring myself to ask. I was taking a bath. He just walked in and pushed me under. He didn't say anything. I saw his face for an instant. He didn't look angry or sad. Then a towel was over my face, and the next thing I remember, I was watching you in a hospital. She frowned. Of course, now the bastard says it was the hardest thing he ever did. Liar. You've talked to him? I asked and saw my eyes widen. Of course she talks to him, dumbass. Where the fuck is he supposed to go? He's right downstairs, for fuck's sake. Would you give it a rest? I shouted. Cynthia cocked her head and said, Tom, you guys need to work something out. Paul, how can I not talk to him? You buried him in the basement. I closed my eyes so I couldn't see myself. I kept them closed when I spoke. You talked to the bastard. Really? When she didn't answer, I found myself holding my breath. I squeezed my eyes shut even harder. When she spoke, I jerked them open with relief and sucked in a bushel of air. It's complicated, I heard her say. I could have told you she's real, but why does she look embarrassed? Tom asked in a quiet voice. Once again, Cynthia answered a question I hadn't asked. Supposedly, she couldn't hear Tom. Look, I was married to the guy for a long time. Now we exist on a different plane. It gives you a different perspective. Paul, pillow talk can be overrated. Coming from a woman I had spent years only talking to, it stung badly. I had asked her if she thought pillow talk was overrated. She had ducked the question like she always did. Now I knew why. Richard was the lover, me the best friend. Paul, stop looking at me like that. I'm here with you. Maybe you should focus on what's important. Cynthia used her fingers to list my problems. First, Gibaldi will not be happy if you stick around. He will want to know what happened to his snitch. Second, your neighbors, like Nurse Ratched, probably had something to do with killing Driscoll. You basically stole a big part of their golf course. That's two pretty big problems, buddy, but not your biggest. Paul, are you paying attention? In fact, I was having trouble concentrating, but I nodded, and Cynthia continued, just as she always had done. Okay, last but not least, Gabriella is alive. Are you listening? She is alive and still your wife. You know what that means, right? Now she had my attention. I looked around the room, then back to the mirror. Cynthia was still there. I told myself that was a good thing. It meant I wasn't crazy, right? Cynthia shook her head. She sensed something had changed and pointed at me. Paul, she tried to kill you. Since then, you stole a lot of money from her old boss, Dragna. What is wrong with you? Don't you know what will happen when she hears that you're alive? Nothing in the world will stop her from coming here, with help, serious help. I closed my eyes and forced myself to concentrate. Why hadn't Tom weighed in? I had real problems. Of that, there was no doubt. Was I sitting alone in a room in front of a mirror, seeing a woman I once loved and hearing a man who claimed to share my body? I opened my eyes. Cynthia was still there. Tom chuckled. She's still here, bud. We're not crazy. Speak for yourself, I replied, and grinned at Cynthia. I knew I was crazy, off-the-wall nuts, because I wasn't worried about the people who wanted me dead. I wondered what the people who wanted me alive were up to. Wanting to talk to Riley and Larry was probably the sanest thing I had felt in years. I wasn't imagining they were my friends. That didn't mean I was someone they needed around. If I lived long enough, maybe I could find a way to see them again. With my luck, I would end up back in Witsec. The real problem was that I needed to face reality. I would never again see the two people I needed most under any circumstance, Adeline and Mandy. I was too toxic. I looked Cynthia in the eye. Hey, Tom, still there? I asked. Where the fuck do you think I would be? He replied. Cynthia shook her head at me, but before she could start in on me again, I held up a hand. Guys, everything will work out. Trust me, I'm all yours, I told them. The end.